Have you ever walked into a room and felt everything shift? Not because of words, not because of noise, but because of someone's mere presence. They don't announce themselves. They don't demand attention. Yet every conversation pauses, every eye turns, and the atmosphere thickens with something you can feel but cannot name. This person might be sitting quietly in the corner. They might be standing still while others rush around them. But there's something about them that pulls focus like gravity. You find yourself aware of where they are in the space, what they're doing, whether they're looking your way. And you can't explain why. They haven't done anything to you. They've simply existed in your proximity, and somehow that existence has rearranged something in your perception. This isn't accident. This isn't genetics. This isn't even charisma in the conventional sense. This is what depth psychology calls the aura, an invisible field of energy that radiates from a soul that has achieved inner integration. But here's what most people misunderstand. We've been taught that power comes from being louder, more impressive, more visible. So we perform. We speak endlessly to prove our value. We display our achievements, our intelligence, even our kindness, desperate to be seen. We curate ourselves like products on a shelf, hoping someone will choose us, validate us, remember us. And the more we do this, the more we lose the very thing we're trying to create. Because true aura doesn't emerge from effort. It emerges when you stop expending energy on proving anything at all. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you encounter someone with genuine presence, you don't just observe them. Something in you responds, shifts, awakens. Your body knows before your mind understands. Your posture might change. Your breathing might adjust. Your attention sharpens or softens. That's because they've touched a layer recognized by the deepest part of your psyche, the part that exists beyond conscious thought. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding that power is not something you grasp from the world, but something that naturally radiates when you've mastered your inner world. Today you'll discover that building an aura isn't the art of controlling others. It's the silent language of a soul that has learned to control itself. So what creates this invisible force? In analytical psychology, aura is the natural outcome of psychic integration. When the conscious ego harmonizes with the rejected aspects of the unconscious, when your displayed self aligns with your hidden self, energy stops scattering. It concentrates. It forms a unified field that others perceive even without understanding why. Think of two people. One talks constantly trying to impress through displays of success and wisdom. The other remains quiet, simply listening. But their gaze holds such depth it seems to see through facades. When they finally speak, the room falls silent. What separates them isn't their words, but their degree of inner wholeness. The first operates from ego, perpetually seeking external validation. The second operates from what depth psychology calls the self, the center of the entire psyche, where ego, unconscious, and shadow have reached reconciliation. This is crucial to understand in Carl Jung. Empath and personal development work. The more whole you become internally, the more you influence the external world. Not because you're trying to, but because others sense the consistency in your energy. Consider this carefully. A person whose thoughts contradict their feelings, whose words don't match their actions, emits chaotic energy. You feel it as instability, as something untrustworthy. But someone with true presence has achieved congruence. Their thoughts, emotions, speech, and behavior all move in the same direction. This alignment radiates the energy of order. And where there is order, something deep in the human psyche feels safe. Here's the mechanism most people miss. Your energy becomes powerful, not through what you add, but through what you stop leaking. Most of us live in constant internal conflict. We desire control, yet fear losing it. We want love, yet fear rejection. We seek expression, yet fear judgment. These conflicts make psychic energy oscillate wildly, like a pendulum swinging between extremes. But when you dare to face your shadow, to accept the parts you've denied, weakness, jealousy, rage wounds, that energy is freed. It stops fragmenting. The process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of yourself, even the dark ones, creates a concentrated flow of energy. And that concentrated energy is what others experience as magnetic presence. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the repository of everything you've been taught to reject about yourself. Every emotion labeled inappropriate, every desire deemed unacceptable, every trait that didn't fit the image you were supposed to maintain. But here's the paradox. The energy you use to suppress these aspects is the same energy that could fuel your presence. When you stop fighting yourself, when you acknowledge the full spectrum of your humanity, that suppressed energy returns to you. It becomes available. It radiates outward as authentic power. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Those with the strongest auras aren't the ones who've avoided suffering. They're the ones who've walked through their personal darkness and emerged without bitterness, without resentment. They've transmuted their trials into depth, and depth, not perfection, is what commands attention. The truth is, aura cannot be faked. You can train yourself to speak slowly, to control your expressions, to dress impressively. But if anxiety churns beneath the surface, that energy will seep through every gesture. The collective unconscious, the deep layer of the psyche we all share, reads energy before it registers reason. Humans sense your true frequency long before they understand why they're drawn to you or repelled by you. Pillar 1. Silence is the magnet. There's a paradox in human psychology that most never grasp. The person who speaks constantly is often the least heard. The silent one occupies minds long after they've left the room. We're not drawn to sound. We're drawn to the void, to mystery, to what remains unexplained. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. When you maintain silence, you create space. And into that space, the unconscious of others rushes to impose meaning, to interpret, to understand. This is projection, the phenomenon where people assign their own hidden qualities to you. When you're silent, they don't hear you. They hear the echo of their own inner voice in your stillness. This is essential to Carl Jung empath and personal development. Words belong to consciousness, but silence is the language of the unconscious. And human beings are guided far more by what lies beneath awareness than by rational thought. The disciplined understand that true energy requires no verbal expression. When you speak less, when you allow pauses between statements, you make others feel your presence rather than just process your words. They respond to your energy itself, not merely the content of your speech. But not all silence carries power. There's the silence of fear, of insecurity, of hiding. That silence confuses and unsettles. Then there's the silence of one who has transcended the need to be understood. This silence commands respect because it signals completeness. When you're silent to be fully present, rather than to conceal, your energy gains weight. The room still hears you. Space itself adjusts to you. Can you sit with yourself in complete silence for 5 minutes without reaching for distraction, without scrolling, without speaking, without filling the emptiness? If you find this difficult, it's not a character flaw. It's simply evidence that energy is still leaking through the fear of stillness. But when you cultivate comfort in silence, something remarkable happens. Your quiet begins to carry mass. When you don't speak, others lean forward. When you pause, they wait. Your absence of words becomes more compelling than anyone else's abundance of them. Pillar 2. Power comes from the unpredictable. Silence creates attraction, but predictability destroys it. Anything easily grasped loses its allure. The authentic power of presence lies not in manufactured mystery, but in being an ever-shifting flow that defies simple categorization. The human mind seeks to control through understanding. We feel safe when we can predict, when we know what comes next. Yet simultaneously, it's the incomprehensible that activates the deepest layers of consciousness. The unpredictable stirs the unconscious because it touches the unresolved, the unknown parts of ourselves. Have you ever met someone you couldn't define? They're both warm and distant, both gentle and dangerous. You can't fit them into any familiar category. And precisely because of this, they linger in your thoughts. They occupy mental space. That's the power of defying definition. When you're unpredictable enough, others cannot pin down your identity. So they project onto you all the images they feel they lack. One person sees safety, another sees threat, another sees mystery to be solved. You haven't changed. Only their energy reflects differently when encountering you. This is how authentic presence operates. It's not something you control, but how others respond to your complexity. The parts of you that no one fully understands, your contradictions, your shadows, your unexplained depths, these are your source of vitality. Someone who displays only their polished side becomes safe but forgettable. The one who allows aspects of themselves to remain in shadow, unexplained, and simply present, creates instinctive magnetism. But understand the distinction between mystery and manipulation. The manipulator deliberately creates confusion to control. The person of genuine depth simply doesn't expose everything. They don't hide. They just don't need to explain. Their power comes from inner wholeness, where they require no external validation through others' understanding. Pillar 3, equanimity, the unshakable center. You can master silence and cultivate mystery, but if your internal world remains turbulent, your aura will tremble unstable and unconvincing. Only when you achieve inner equanimity does energy gain true gravity, the kind that makes space itself obey. Equanimity isn't the absence of emotion. It's the capacity to hold your essential nature steady amid the storm. The equanimous person isn't pulled into others' emotional chaos. They don't react to the world's frantic tempo. Instead, they make the world adjust to theirs. This state emerges from reconciliation between consciousness and the unconscious. When you don't understand yourself, you're stretched between opposing forces. The conflicts create energy oscillation. The harder you try to stay calm through willpower alone, the more exhausted you become. But once you face your inner shadow, accepting the parts you've denied, that energy is liberated. Equanimity arises naturally. It's not something you force. It's what remains when you stop fighting yourself. Within every person lies what can be called the hub of a wheel. When you connect to this center, all surrounding turmoil becomes mere motion at the rim. Anger, anxiety, frustration. These are waves. But you are the ocean. Equanimity is remembering your true nature amid those waves. It's not apathy. It's wakefulness maintained in silence. Someone with genuine equanimity doesn't react, not because they don't feel, but because they feel so profoundly that display becomes unnecessary. Like a mountain requiring no proof of its weight to the wind. When others raise their voices, you might smile. When others lose composure, you maintain even breathing. And that breath alone can slow an entire room. Think of a moment when you witnessed someone remain completely calm while chaos erupted around them. Perhaps during a crisis at work, or a heated argument, or an unexpected emergency. Their steadiness didn't come from not caring. It came from being so deeply rooted in themselves that external turbulence couldn't shake their foundation. That's the equanimity that creates presence. People gravitate toward it, because in a world of constant reactivity, stillness becomes sanctuary. This isn't technique, it's the natural expression of self-observation. When you are present enough to notice what stirs within, you're no longer swept away by it. When others grow heated, you recognize that same potential heat in yourself. That awareness dissolves automatic reaction, leaving natural steadiness. Pillar 4, disappearance, is the ritual of reclaiming power. In a world obsessed with constant visibility, the act of disappearing becomes sacred rebellion. People fear being forgotten, mistaking their value for their visibility. But conscious withdrawal isn't escape. It's reclaiming energy from places that no longer nourish the soul. The more constantly present you are, the easier it is to lose boundaries between self and world. Energy fragments into countless pieces, each trying to please someone, meet some expectation, or match some comparison. You wake exhausted without understanding why. This is what happens when the ego is consumed by endless roles. Disappearance becomes the ritual of gathering those scattered fragments back to center. After every period of giving, of being seen, of engaging, you need space to return to yourself. This is energy's natural law. What only flows outward without equal inflow depletes entirely. When you withdraw from a space, you don't vanish. You shift form. Like a flame extinguished, you're not gone, but returned to a subtler, deeper state. When you fall silent in their lives, others begin hearing your echo in their minds. When you're no longer physically present, they notice the void you've created. And that's when your presence becomes most powerful. Observe those with true influence. They don't appear constantly. They speak rarely. They don't repeat their message endlessly. Yet each emergence commands attention, because continuous visibility cheapens energy, while strategic absence cloaks it in value. People only truly understand what they have when it's absent. That's how the unconscious functions. It doesn't register familiarity in the moment. It awakens only in lack. So disappearance isn't just strategy. It's a lesson in awareness for both parties. When you withdraw, you allow others to see you more clearly, but you also see yourself more clearly. In the absence of noise, you finally hear your soul's authentic voice. Pillar 5. Aura is spiritual discipline. After understanding silence, unpredictability, equanimity, and disappearance, one truth becomes clear. Aura isn't innate. It's forged through daily inner discipline. It doesn't come from how you speak, walk, or dress. It emerges from a spiritual process where the soul is tempered through persistent awareness and self-observation. No one reaches profound presence without traversing chaos. The question isn't what events you've endured, but whether you've developed the discipline to observe yourself within those events. This practice of Carl Jung empath and personal development requires utter honesty with your inner world. Every day presents invitations to step beyond unconscious patterns, familiar reactions, automatic defenses. But only the disciplined recognize these invitations and pause before responding. They don't let instinct command them. They don't allow the external world to dictate their internal rhythm. This discipline begins in the smallest moments. When you're about to speak just to be noticed, but choose silence. When you want to justify yourself, but choose to listen. When you feel compelled to prove something, but choose stillness. In each such choice, you reclaim a fragment of energy previously lost to the need for recognition. Aura, in its deepest sense, isn't something created. It's the energy that remains after you stop expending it unconsciously. Someone without spiritual discipline lives like a vessel without anchor, tossed by every emotional wave, every external judgment. But someone with discipline maintains inner stillness even in storms. Not because they don't feel, but because they choose how to respond to feeling. The practice looks like this. You wake, and before reaching for your phone, you sit in silence for 5 minutes, simply observing what arises in your mind. Throughout the day, you notice the impulse to defend yourself and pause before speaking. In conversations, you catch yourself about to interrupt and choose to listen instead. Before sleep, you review your day not with judgment, but with curiosity, asking where your energy leaked and where it concentrated. These aren't grand gestures. They're micro choices that compound over time. Each moment of conscious observation strengthens the connection to your center. Each pause before reaction builds the muscle of presence. This is how spiritual discipline operates, not through dramatic transformation, but through countless small deaths of the unconscious ego. One doesn't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Every time you gather courage to face your shadow rather than avoid it, you forge new capacity within the soul. The strength of conscious recognition. What distinguishes spiritual discipline from ordinary discipline is its aim. Not external achievement, but internal clarity. You don't build an aura to be universally loved. You don't conserve energy to dominate. You do it to become true to your essential self. And when your energy is untainted by base motives, it radiates naturally. Strong presence is never artifice. It's the honest reflection of a soul cleansed through experience, silence, and solitude. These 5 pillars don't operate in isolation. They weave together into a unified practice. Silence creates the void that draws others in. Unpredictability maintains the mystery that prevents you from being fully grasped. Equanimity provides the unshakable foundation that others instinctively trust. Disappearance preserves your energy and creates value through absence. And discipline sustains it all through daily consciousness. This isn't about manipulation. Manipulation comes from ego seeking power over others. Authentic aura emerges when the self, the integrated whole of your being, naturally influences through its mere existence. You're not trying to control anyone. You're simply no longer controlled by your own unconscious patterns. The transformation moves you from being a fragmented reactor, someone whose energy scatters in response to every external stimulus, to becoming an integrated presence. Someone whose energy remains centered regardless of circumstance. In practice, this looks like commanding respect without demanding it, attracting without chasing, being remembered without performing. Most importantly, it means feeling at peace in your own presence. You enter a meeting and don't feel compelled to prove your worth through excessive talking. You encounter criticism and don't collapse into defensiveness. You receive praise and don't inflate with ego. You remain steady because your sense of self no longer depends on external validation. The shift is internal. Before you wondered how to make others see you, now you focus on seeing yourself clearly. Power stops being something you pursue. It becomes something you are. Chapter 5. The Transformation. Imagine walking into spaces differently now. Not because you've changed your external behavior, but because your psychic energy has unified. Others sense an order in you that they seek within themselves. You don't try to be magnetic. You simply exist as an integrated being, and that wholeness naturally draws attention. Your thoughts now align with your feelings. Your words align with your actions. There's no internal war draining your energy. What radiates outward is coherence, consistency, authentic power. But understand this clearly. Integration isn't a single achievement. It's a daily practice of choosing consciousness over unconscious reaction. Some days, you'll fragment again. That's human. The difference now is that you notice when it happens, and you know how to return to center. The process of becoming whole is lifelong. Each layer of shadow you integrate adds new depth to your presence. Each moment of awareness strengthens what others experience as your aura. You're not constructing something artificial. You're unveiling who you always were beneath the noise of trying to become who others wanted. What changes starting today? Not dramatic overhaul, but small, conscious choices. Next time you feel the urge to speak just to be seen, pause. Next time you want to explain or justify yourself, choose silence. Next time anxiety rises, breathe and observe rather than react. Each micro-choice rewires the psyche. Your presence will begin carrying its own weight, whether you're in a crowd or an empty room, because you've touched something eternal. The integrated self that was always there, waiting beneath the scattered energy of performance and pretense. You walk through the world now as someone who is reconciled with their wholeness, not perfect, but complete. Not without darkness, but no longer afraid of it. Not without emotion, but no longer controlled by it. This is the aura that bends reality not through force, but through the gravitational pull of an integrated soul. Others will notice, though they may not understand why. They'll find themselves thinking of you when you're not there. They'll feel differently in your presence, calmer, or more alert, more honest, or more careful. They'll struggle to define you, and in that struggle, they'll project onto you their own longing for wholeness. You become a mirror reflecting what they could be if they dared to face themselves as you have faced yourself. You haven't learned to create an aura. You've remembered that your wholeness was never absent, only hidden. The light isn't seeking you. You are the light finally unveiled. And from this moment forward, you don't chase the spotlight. You don't perform for validation. You don't fragment yourself, trying to fit into molds designed by others' expectations. You are the presence that makes others pause, that shifts atmospheres, that commands attention through the simple, profound act of being authentically, completely, undeniably yourself. The power was always yours. You've simply stopped giving it away.